So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope can't get my words out. I hope everything's good wherever you guys are. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, share the video as always, guys. And guys, I want to talk about a topic that has been passed on to me. Apparently the WBC may make Canelo Alvarez a franchise champion, which means he will never, or he won't ever be mandated to fight a mandatory, which obviously we know, which means that the Benavidez fight won't be ordered. Now, a lot of people are saying this is a strategy from the WBC to protect Canelo, so then Canelo Alvarez never has to fight David Benavidez and he can duck David Benavidez. A lot of people have already been saying that Canelo Alvarez is not he's not the consensus champion until he beats Benavidez. He's not the number 168 pounder unless he beats David Benavidez. Canelo's just lost to Dimitri Bivol, and everybody's starting to put a lot of pressure on Canelo and say that he needs to fight this guy, that guy, that guy. Firstly, Canelo Alvarez, to a lot of the haters out there, Canelo Alvarez is at 168 pounds. He's got a 3-fight deal with DAZN and Matchroom, and last time I checked, David Benavidez isn't with Matchroom or DAZN. He's with the PBC, so they're going to want him to fight on their platform, on DAZN. So unless David Benavidez is given permission, right, which he won't be able to, which he won't get, because they won't allow him to come and fight on DAZN, Canelo Alvarez and David Benavidez can't fight. Because the only way that fight will happen is if it happens on the PBC or Fox or wherever they broadcast their fights. So let's think logically rather than illogically that for the next couple of fights, the David Benavidez fight can't happen anyway, right? Do I agree with the WBC doing what they're doing if that's the case? Absolutely not. You know, because the whole point of look, there's no point of being a champion if you're not gonna fight your mandatory challengers, especially when that mandatory challenger is a legitimate fighter, a legitimate guy, a legitimate mandatory which people, a fight that fans want to see. In that sense, the mandatories are really good. But here's the point I'm trying to make, is that we know the next couple of fights aren't going to be Benavidez. So why are we worried about David Benavidez? They know that. David Benavidez's manager knows that. And he tried to spin it in a different way where it made Canelo look bad, that Canelo's not going to fight David Benavidez, he's not going to fight him, this, that, and the other. I believe that fight will happen. Canelo will eventually fight David Benavidez down the road because the fight will be too big where Canelo just won't be able to ignore it. Also, after his performance against Dimitri Bivol, it might also limit the weight classes that Canelo might decide to go to, in the sense that he's got thoroughly outboxed by Bivol. If he has no intention of fighting Dimitri Bivol or fighting at 175, it also limits his options of where he can go. So he'll have to stay at 168, which means a fight with David Benavidez will, if he, have to be a fight he has to consider, because he won't have a lot of options at that point, right? If he decides to stay at 168 and not move up, which may be the case, because after the Dimitri Bivol fight, people will say that he's not really a 168, 175 pounder. So again, it then limits the guys like Andre Benavidez. Charlo will most likely get their shot if Canelo stays in the sport long enough, which he will, I believe. So people need to stop getting themselves in a twist and stop saying that he's ducking Benavidez, when everybody knew when he took the Matchroom deal that the next couple of fights were going to be against Bivol and Golovkin. So why are people saying now that he's ducking David Benavidez when he took the offer of Bivol and Golovkin and he lost to Bivol, which obviously again proved the fight was a very credible fight, which a lot of people were saying were cherries, which is absolute nonsense and rubbish. But Canelo has so many detractors and I get called a fanboy I call Canelo out. I'm calling the WBC franchise thing BS. I think David Benavidez should be mandated if he's mandatory, and Canelo should have to fight him. But the point I'm trying to make is, right now we know the politics in boxing, and we know that Canelo Alvarez has signed a deal with Matchroom and DAZN for the next couple of fights, right? If he's not going to fight at 175, right, then a fight with Benavidez will have to happen, because Canelo ain't going to have many big fights. And Benavidez is going to be a massive fight, as Eddie Hearn pointed out, that Canelo Alvarez and David Benavidez is a massive fight. We all know that. And Canelo knows that. Canelo team know that. The longer they wait, Benavidez is only young, the bigger the fight's going to get. And actually the better chance that David Benavidez has, the longer he waits. The more experience he gets, the more older Canelo gets. Because right now, for me, it's a wash. I know people say, oh, Benavidez ain't going to do nothing. To be honest, I know from watching Benavidez that he's not beating Canelo. But again, it's a cool story to sell. You know, it's a cool story to sell. It's a cool way to look at things about Benavidez, but he ain't beating Canelo. But that aside, anyway, that fight, I believe, will happen down the road. It's just, like I said, people are just trying to talk rubbish when they know the situation that Canelo's in right now. You know, he's got another 2 fights deal on with DAZN, and then we'll see what he decides to do. But you can't, irrespective of what the WBC decide to do, if the WBC say that, you know what, Canelo becomes a franchise, right, and Canelo doesn't fight David Benavidez, then I've got a problem with that. Because for me, David Benavidez, especially if Canelo decides to stay at 168, David Benavidez is a fight that has to happen. But the fact of the matter is, if the WBC do that, and Canelo wants that, then I'm against that. I am against that. Having said that, is Canelo doing that because Canelo's going to avoid Benavidez forever? No. Because he can't. If he's going to stay at 168, he has to fight Benavidez somewhere along the line. He's going to run out of opponents. You know, who's he going to fight? Charlo? Who's he going to fight? Do you know what I mean? So I think we need to be realistic about it, that Canelo's probably doing that right now so he can keep hold of his titles. But irrespective of that, franchise, what does it mean? Because some people say being franchise is not being a world they don't consider it. Some people don't consider it as a world title belt. So does that mean Canelo's not undisputed? Then I don't get it. I don't know what's going on, because I saw they were saying David Benavidez has become a 3-time world champion. But how did he become a world champion? Canelo Alvarez has the WBC belt, doesn't he? So how did he become a how did he become a champion? You know, if Canelo holds a belt, it's all confusing, it's all nonsense. But Canelo needs to fight David Benavidez somewhere down the line. I think the fight's too big and it will happen. He needs to fight him, full stop. You know, irrespective of who Benavidez is fighting, the fight's too big now, and Benavidez is too big for Canelo to just avoid that fight throughout his career. That has to happen. You know, but let's not forget, Canelo just fought Dimitri Bivol, so he's not afraid to fight David Benavidez. You know, he just fought a guy who's better than David Benavidez. You know, and let's be real about it. So let's not make out like Canelo's ducking and avoiding David Benavidez. Not in the slightest. He probably just wants longer time so he doesn't get stripped or whatever. But I don't know what the situation is with the belts, because it's just nonsense anyway. But the fact is, if Canelo is doing that to avoid David Benavidez and not fight him, then obviously I've got a problem with that. But we don't know that yet. Let things play out first. You know, Canelo might want to fight David Benavidez when he wants to fight him, not when people want to fight him. A lot of people said he was ducking Golovkin and he vacated the belt. And he gave an answer, said that I wanted to fight him when I want to fight him, not when someone else wants me to fight him. Canelo's not afraid to fight anybody, hence he fought Golovkin eventually. Golovkin was far more dangerous at the time to Canelo than Benavidez is right now. He fought Golovkin twice and he's fighting him for the 3rd time. The point I'm trying to make is that Canelo will eventually fight David Benavidez. And here's the thing, he can't age Benavidez out because Benavidez is 25 years of age. So this is another thing you guys got to understand. He could do it with Golovkin because Golovkin was older than him. He can't do it with Benavidez. So all this stuff about him saying this, that and the other, Benavidez, he's ducking Benavidez. Come on, man, that's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. Canelo Alvarez will eventually fight David Benavidez. He'll eventually fight him. But you've got to give someone time. He's just currently in a deal with Matchroom and DAZN, which goes another 2 fights. So he's going to fight Golovkin and then he might fight Bivol again. So you have to give the guy a break. You have to give the guy, some time. And then after, if he fights Bivol again, rematches Bivol, then after that, then he may fight Benavidez. Then he may fight Benavidez or he may fight someone better than Benavidez. Who knows? The point I'm trying to make is to start saying that he's avoiding him right now, I just feel is an agenda when you know that he can't fight Benavidez. Benavidez fights on another platform. But that platform is not going to allow Benavidez. When do PBC fighters, their top fighters, when do they allow him to go and fight on other platforms? Especially in a fight that includes Canelo Alvarez, which will be seen one of the biggest fights in boxing, Canelo and Benavidez. Do you honestly think Al Haymon and PBC are going to allow him to go and fight on DAZN? When you know Canelo Alvarez has got a 2 more fight deal with DAZN. He's got 2 more fights with DAZN. So let's be realistic about the situation. People like to twist things too much. Canelo is currently in a deal that he's got to fulfill before he can do something else. So even talking about Benavidez is stupid and ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. Because why? That's not going to happen. We have to be realistic about this stuff. Canelo and Benavidez is not happening anytime soon because Canelo has got a deal with Matchroom and DAZN. And when he fulfills that deal, a fight with Benavidez will come to the front. I'm pretty sure, because it's too big a fight to be ignored from Canelo. It's too big a fight. It'll probably turn out to be even bigger than Golovkin eventually. It's a fight that will not be ignored. It'll become too big, especially if Benavidez keeps putting in performances like he did on Saturday. The demand will become so big. Imagine if Benavidez actually fights somebody and beats them. Imagine how bigger it would become, rather than just fighting these guys that he's fighting. This is what I'm trying to say. Like, people need to understand that boxing, it's not as straightforward. The guy has signed a deal, 3-fight deal. He can't just, oh, well, Benavidez was the number 1 guy. I should have fought him before. Well, no, because Benavidez wasn't a champion. He wasn't a champion. He fought all the champions. There was no need for him to fight Benavidez. That's why he fought Bivol, because Bivol was a champion, right? If Benavidez keeps doing what he's doing, eventually Benavidez will put himself in a position. And by the way, the WBC may be, okay, if they're saying the WBC protecting Canelo, all the other 3 boxing organizations, they can take a stance and make, enforce a mandatory. The point I'm trying to make is Canelo Alvarez will eventually have to face David Benavidez because the fight will become too big for it to be ignored. Just from a business point of view. He's not, Canelo's not scared of anyone. He's not scared of anyone. He just fought Dmitry Bivol, which was a disastrous fight for him. He's now coming straight off that fighting Golovkin. And people say, well, Golovkin's 40. It doesn't matter if Golovkin's 40. He's still a dangerous fight for Canelo. And then if he fights Dmitry Bivol again after Golovkin, then what are people going to say? If he fights Dmitry Bivol, a guy that's just beaten him after Golovkin, then what are people going to say? That he's ducking Benavidez when he's fighting someone more credible that's beaten him. That style we know is a problem for him. So the point I'm trying to make is the David Benavidez fight will happen. You just got to be patient. It will happen because Canelo can't avoid that fight. Wherever he goes, David Benavidez will follow because David Benavidez is a big guy and he can make any weight that Canelo makes. Unless Canelo goes to heavyweight, which ain't happening. So the point I'm trying to make is the David Benavidez fight is too big to be ignored. Eddie Hearn said it. It's too big. It's a massive fight. It's not going to be ignored. It will happen. So we need to relax about this coming down on Canelo like this, because the Benavidez fight is a massive fight, huge fight. It will happen. It's too big a fight to be ignored. You see the Andrade and that fight. Is it a fight that's too big? No, I don't think so. I think that's a big fight as well. But I think Canelo doesn't have to fight Andrade, but I think that's a big fight as well. If Canelo stays at 168, he's limiting his options. If he decides that I'm not going to 175, then he's limiting his options on who he can fight. And he's limiting his options that at 168, which will then, if he's going to fight for another 5-6 years, guys like Andrade will probably get their opportunity. Or most of them will get their opportunity. Benavidez, Charlo. Benavidez and Charlo will definitely get their opportunity, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't think he's ducking Benavidez. I just think right now he's in a deal with Matchroom and DAZN. And when that deal's up, then we'll see what he decides to do. But to just constantly say he's ducking, I think it's nonsense. But just my opinion. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.